In the early 1900s, in the small town of Nkrumah in the Gold Coast, now modern-day Ghana, a boy was born who would one day shake the foundations of colonial rule across Africa. His name was Kwame Nkrumah. Born in 1909, Nkrumah grew up under British colonial rule. From a young age, he showed brilliance and determination. After training as a teacher, he traveled abroad to pursue higher education. In the United States, he studied at Lincoln University, where he earned degrees in theology and philosophy. But more importantly, he was exposed to powerful ideas: Black empowerment, Pan-Africanism, and resistance against colonial oppression. Later in London, Nkrumah became deeply involved in the Pan-African movement. He worked alongside influential thinkers like George Padmore and participated in the historic Fifth Pan-African Congress. There, African and Caribbean leaders demanded independence from European colonial powers. For Nkrumah, this was not just politics, it was destiny. In 1947, Nkrumah returned home to the Gold Coast. The people were restless. Colonial rule had lasted for decades. Economic hardship and racial inequality were widespread. Nkrumah quickly rose as a powerful voice for change. In 1949, he founded the Convention People's Party with one clear message: self-government now. His strategy was bold mass mobilization, strikes, and what he called positive action. The British colonial government saw him as a threat. In 1950, he was arrested and imprisoned. But prison did not silence him. Instead, it made him more powerful. In 1951, while still behind bars, Nkrumah's party won a landslide victory in national elections. The people had spoken. The British had no choice but to release him. He became leader of government business and later prime minister. Then came the historic moment. On March 6, 1957, the Gold Coast became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from colonial rule, renaming itself Ghana. At midnight, Nkrumah stood before a cheering crowd and declared, "Ghana is free forever." But for Nkrumah, Ghana's freedom was only the beginning. He believed Africa must unite as one political and economic force. He championed Pan-Africanism and worked closely with leaders like Haile Selassie and Julius Nyerere. In 1963, he played a key role in forming the Organization of African Unity, a major step toward continental cooperation. At home, Nkrumah launched ambitious industrial and infrastructure projects. The most famous was the Akosombo Dam, designed to power Ghana's modernization. Schools, roads, and factories expanded rapidly. He wanted Ghana to become a symbol of African pride and progress. However, his rule grew increasingly authoritarian. Political opponents were detained, and economic challenges began to mount. Heavy spending and falling cocoa prices strained Ghana's economy. By the mid-1960s, dissatisfaction was rising. In 1966, while Nkrumah was on a peace mission abroad, he was overthrown in a military coup. His dream was interrupted. He lived the rest of his life in exile in Guinea, welcomed by President Sékou Touré as a co-president in symbolic solidarity. Nkrumah died in 1972, far from the country he helped liberate. Yet his legacy remains powerful. Kwame Nkrumah was more than Ghana's first president. He was one of the architects of African independence. His vision of a united Africa still inspires leaders and movements today. Streets, universities, and monuments across the continent bear his name. He once said, "I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." And decades later, his dream of unity, dignity, and self-determination continues to echo across the continent.